Cool. Hi, everyone. Hey, Jesse, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How's it going, everybody? How's it going, Daniel? Thanks for just setting everything up.
Going well. I was just playing on my piano. I hope everybody liked it.
Really nice. Very nice loop you had going there. It's odd how it was perfect every single cycle.
Yes, I was panicking though because the music changed and it was stuck. But yeah, we made it. Um, so yeah, hi everybody. Welcome to another X Space event. Today, Jesse and myself will provide some updates on the Energy Web ecosystem. But before we dive into that, Jesse, just for our new listeners, can you explain what Energy Web is trying to achieve?
Yes, and great to see that there's some new faces in the space event here. Thanks for joining us. Look at the highest level. We are Energy Web. So we are a global nonprofit organization, and we focus on building digital solutions. So, in other words, software. We build software to help energy companies to bring solutions to life that accelerate decarbonization. So we help large energy companies deploy digital solutions that make it easier for them to decarbonize. And if I kind of zoom in on that just for a moment, there's really two specific solutions that we and our partners and these energy companies have brought to market over the past several years because we've been around since about 2017. The first is something that we call a data exchange solution. We also call it our digital spine solution that you can see out there in the market today. And that is focused on totally transforming the way that we balance the electric grid, making it possible to use assets like batteries and electric vehicles and heat pumps and all of these decentralized energy assets. And we network them together and make it possible for those assets to balance the grid instead of large thermal power plants. So that's one solution that we'll talk a little bit more about. And then the second solution that we've brought to market again with that same ecosystem of partners is something called Green Proofs. And what we do there is we help basically mini consortia of different energy companies and energy regulators bring to life new solutions to make it easier to track and trace new green energy supply chains. And the short story there is that there are a lot of these different products and supply chains that are critical to decarbonizing the global economy. And those different supply chains can be pretty complicated. These are for products like fuel for planes that comes from places other than oil. It can be products like, I think we're going to talk about it, Bitcoin that is mined from miners that actually are using renewable electricity. So those are two examples of products and supply chains that are pretty complicated. And this greenproof solution is basically used to bring dramatic levels of transparency and traceability to these new supply chains. So those are the two solutions that we work with energy companies from around the world to stand up in order to accelerate decarbonization. And we have a technology stack that underpins everything we do. And that tech stack uses a variety of different technologies, including, I think, obviously interested for this audience has joined us here on X today, including blockchain and a variety of other Web3 technologies. So hopefully that's kind of the breakdown of what we do and what we're all about.
Awesome. So, Jesse, let's dive right into Greenpost for Bitcoin. Last May, we launched Greenpost for Bitcoin alongside global miners. Obviously, we had a lot of miners that were supporting us since the beginning. What are the developments? How are things going? And what can we expect?
Yeah, so for folks that are new to the organization, just to double click on that for a minute, about 2 years ago, everybody who's in the crypto industry on this hangout probably starts remembering the very significant heightened attention that the Bitcoin community and Bitcoin miners in particular were getting from the ESG or sustainability community, right? And the focus there was that the Bitcoin network, because it uses proof of work consensus, is really quite energy intense. And because our electric grids are not fully decarbonized, that means that the Bitcoin network taken as a whole does have a pretty significant carbon footprint because it uses a lot of electricity from a lot of different grids around the world that aren't running on 100% renewables. So, because we as Energy Web kind of sit somewhat at the nexus of the clean energy transition and crypto and blockchain, because part of our technology stack uses blockchain and these other Web3 technologies, we said, what can we do about it? So we launched this initiative called Green Proofs for Bitcoin. And just like you said, Daniel, we launched it early this year with a number of different miners that have been certified. And the idea there is that Bitcoin miners can come in, they can provide a lot of different data, data covering where are their mining operations, what kind of renewable energy have they bought, are they participating in what are called demand response programs so that their electricity load can be shut down in the event there's an emergency on the grid. So a variety of different things like that. And then that information comes in Energy Web. Those miners are certified or not, depending on whether or not they meet these standards. And then they are issued some credentials that are tracked on the Energy Web chain, basically showing whether or not they've been certified. So all of those certifications for these miners, they're currently sitting in a registry. Some of the detail of that registry is available to the public, so you can actually go right now and check out some of that information. Not all of it is publicly available. Some of these miners are not comfortable fully disclosing all of the information about their mining operations. But again, you can check out more of that information online. So earlier this year, we were really excited to announce that first batch of miners that have been certified. We're continuing to have conversations with additional miners to try and grow the set of miners that have come through that ecosystem. But that's where we are, just kind of on that specific point about the miners that have been certified. And then
Jesse,
I guess to hint at a little bit to hint at what's to come is just how is that registry going to be used? So basically, right now, these miners are using those certifications in marketing. It's very effective for them to say, hey, the energy transition is important. We know that bringing renewables to the Bitcoin network is important. So that's how they're using it. But we're also in conversation with some institutional organizations who are looking at using this Green Proofs for Bitcoin registry in another way.
so Jesse, I have two questions on this topic from the community. So the first one is, who's in charge of the data of the miners? Like, is Energy Web deciding, or the miners deciding what they want to publish?
So we'll split that apart. The certification, so those are the rules, if you will, about what needs to be true for a miner to be certified. That was developed by Energy Web, and that certification, that standard, is maintained and housed by us. We developed that standard in consultation over about an 18-month period with Bitcoin miners on one side, and then on the other side, a number of large financial institutions that are looking at building potential derivatives of Bitcoin that have to do with, and when I say derivatives, so financial derivatives of Bitcoin that have to do with Bitcoin coming from miners that have been certified as renewable. And then we also developed that in consultation with a number of different non-governmental organizations that are very active kind of in the space of setting standards around decarbonization. So that's just the standard itself. The data is, no, of course it's not ours. So again, these miners, they hold data about where their load is, where they're conducting mining operations, what kind of renewables they've purchased. They have to provide that information and supporting documentation in order for us to evaluate whether or not they meet one of these different standards and criteria.
Awesome. So let's double click on the institutions. Another question, hot question actually. Could you give an example of how institutions could benefit or use Green Proofs for Bitcoin, like a real world example?
Yes. So again, the miners are using these certifications right now. I mean, check out some of the different miners that have been certified, how they're using this in communications, how they're using it to communicate to their boards if they're publicly traded companies. I mean, this is the only actual, tangible, enforceable standard out there for this topic. The other initiatives in the space of kind of Bitcoin decarbonization are either about, hey, let's throw out proof of work, which we, just don't think that is a very pragmatic approach to the space. And then on the other side, there's a number of different initiatives where organizations will publish very high-level reports about how much energy their units are using and what kind of energy, but there's very little detail. So again, this is being used right now by these different miners and organizations in the Bitcoin community just to bring more transparency and trust into some of the mining organizations that are actually using renewables, which is awesome, at least from our perspective. The other side of that coin is though asking, well, okay, if this registry is out there, what kind of products and services can be built using that registry to bring Bitcoin that has been produced by these renewably certified miners to market? And so those are the conversations with these financial organizations. For example, if you look at some of these other, let's step away from Bitcoin for a second. There's a number of different products out there for bonds or other kinds of investments or other products that are, if we were in person, you'd see me using air quotes here, green. So basically, that means an investor can get exposure to an investment in a bond or potentially a different index, a stock index, or other financial products that enable those investors to say, I now have financial exposure to these different products that are associated with the energy transition. So basically, at the highest level, a conversation with these financial market organizations is saying, well, wait a minute, let's do the same thing for Bitcoin. They're not interested in creating a separate Bitcoin or some sort of an NFT class or some sort of a second layer token on another blockchain that represents green Bitcoin. What they're interested in is, can we give institutional investors or potentially even retail investors exposure to Bitcoin that has been produced by miners that have been certified? So that's the conversation with these institutional organizations, is giving a mix of institutional organizations, but also potentially retail investors access to Bitcoin that has been produced by these renewably produced miners. So you could envision that's how the registry could be used. And we're pushing forward on that with a number of different companies and organizations. And we hope to have some more information that we can make public soon.
Awesome. Another update, I think we released this in July, was a digital spine toolkit and integration. Could you tell us a little bit more about how the digital spine solution is used, what it is, and what we can expect from this solution in the future?
Yes. So the Greenproof for Bitcoin piece that we just talked about uses one of our two kind of primary solutions, which is called Greenproofs. The other area where we're most active is on specifically the electric grid, and that's via something that we call our data exchange and or digital spine solution. And to give context for the folks on the line here, I mean, I'm sitting here in the US. Let's go to Texas for a moment. So Texas is more or less its own electricity network and market. It's basically cut off from the rest of the United States because of the way that the grid is designed there. It has tens of millions of people that live in the state and lots of different businesses that use a lot of electricity. And in the past several months, the Texas grid has been pushed to the absolute extreme. Lots of people coming home, flipping on their air conditioning at the same time in response to very significant and relentless heat waves, which has been a real bummer to see. And the grid just isn't built to support that kind of electric load. So in places like Texas and in places like other places in the world where there's more and more electricity being used by different businesses and households, potentially at the same time, you kind of run into this problem where the grid just isn't built to support that level of stress. So one way to give utilities and to give electricity system regulators a tool to fight that increasing level of stress on the grid is to make it possible for assets that are already sitting out there in Texas and in other places around the world. What if we could use those assets, again, that the utilities aren't buying, but that me and other people and you, Daniel, and other people in the world are buying? What if we could use those assets to actually bring some of that stress off the grid? And what I'm talking about there are these naturally distributed assets that people are just buying for a variety of different reasons. So they could be rooftop solar systems. They could be batteries, like Tesla Powerwalls sitting in people's basement. They could be electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations, air conditioning units, thermostats. Basically anything that uses a significant amount of electricity but can be communicated with. And the concept here is, if you can take all of those assets, if you can network them together, and if you can make it reliable and trustworthy for different electric grid operators to interact with those assets and either control them or pay the owners of those assets to do something with them, you've just given electric utilities a totally different tool for managing these events like the Texas grid operators have been seeing with these crazy heat waves. So that's what our solution is focused on. Our digital spine toolkit is what it says. It gives grid operators a digital spine to act as kind of a nervous system so that those electric utilities can interact with all of these different assets and make it possible for those assets to either not use electricity at certain times of day, to inject power back into the grid at certain times of the day, or provide other services that'll help make it easier for stressed grids to be able to operate. So again, that's what we're focused on doing. There are a lot of really amazing companies in this space that are shipping products that can do this. If you have an electric vehicle, your vehicle is capable of doing these wonderful things. If you have a heat pump, your heat pump is capable of doing these things. The trick is electric utilities don't really have the tools needed to actually form relationships with those assets and do stuff with them. So at its core, that's what the digital spine solution does. It's digital infrastructure that makes it possible for these utilities to interact with and communicate all of those various assets in order to get use out of them. So hopefully that helps explain how the solution works.
Awesome, Jesse. Our next topic is about our software as a solution platform. So we've already seen some examples in the Q2 product marketing report. Could you tell us a little bit more about the SaaS model and how this will work and why we need a SaaS model?
Definitely. So everything we've been talking about so far, Daniel, are these large implementations of either these greenproof solutions or these digital spine solutions that our team as EnergyWeb, and in some cases, some partners, are helping these large energy companies stand up on their own, either on their own infrastructure or EnergyWeb infrastructure or a third party's infrastructure. For example, some of these solutions are available on Microsoft Azure right now. And that's working, but it's not working at a scale that is fast enough for these solutions to have a meaningful impact on the energy transition. So the vision here with this software as a service platform is, what if we could make it possible for both these greenproof solutions and these digital spine solutions to be rapidly spun up and constructed by energy companies without EnergyWeb being directly involved? So if you look at some of these other enterprise software solutions, whether we're talking about, a billing platform for an electric utility, or just other simpler enterprise software as a service solutions to make it possible for them to spin up different databases, the vision with our software as a service platform is, can we make it possible for an electric utility to, on their own, spin up a digital spine solution so that they themselves can be basically interacting with all these customer assets on their side of the network, instead of working with EnergyWeb or with another market participant for months and in some cases years to get one of these solutions off the ground. Same thing on the greenproof side. What if you had a consortia of energy companies that want to construct a registry for some new green product? It could be something like green hydrogen. It could be something like green steel. There are a lot of companies trying to produce steel that is coming from verified low carbon sources and feedstocks. What if we could make it possible for those market participants to spin up their own registries in a very quick period of time? So that's the vision. The EnergyWeb software service as a platform, software as a service platform, is meant to help those kinds of companies. And it's going to be released in the coming quarters in piecemeal fashion. So first, there will be a couple of different samples that are released to our partners and the customers in the EnergyWeb ecosystem that help them see how some of these existing solutions work. It's going to give them the ability to configure their own, we call them workflows. So these are specific computational efforts that sets of EnergyWeb worker nodes can work on. And we can talk more about worker nodes later, but basically I'm going into that level of detail to say that this software as a service platform is going to be rolled out in a piecemeal fashion with a number of features released over time. Some of those features will also be kind of core Web3 infrastructure pieces. EnergyWeb validators, for example, will be able to spin up validator nodes as a service. There will be a variety of different RPC node services available. So basically, that's the software as a service platform that's going to be coming to market. And also, I guess I should mention that everything having to do there with worker nodes and everything else is, I know we're going to talk about this, Daniel, all powered by EnergyWeb X and the EnergyWeb token, as we've talked about. So just to try and connect the dots there between all the different technologies.
Awesome, Jesse. So yeah, I think that was really important. Everything is powered by EnergyWeb X and the EnergyWeb token as the utility token of our ecosystem. Most exciting, we've just secured a priority chain slot on the Polkadot network. First thoughts, Jesse. Were you up? Were you checking it out? I know you were. And what's next?
Yeah, I was up with you. You're crazy, staying up to the wee hours of the night, but it was awesome to see that. We're really, really excited to bring this second blockchain to life in the Energy Web ecosystem. It was awesome to see all of this come together. I've been getting demos of what the actual user interface looks like for enterprises to interact with Energy Web X via these worker node networks. I think it's going to be awesome. I think for context for the folks on the line here, most of the energy companies we work with are really, really interested in these solutions themselves. So they want, access to software that's going to solve some of these business pain points and enable them to pull off some of the interactions with energy sector assets that I've been describing in this conversation. Behind the scenes, from our side, we know that blockchain can perform some of these functions really effectively. For example, anchoring identity. For another example, anchoring these different worker nodes that perform some of this useful computational work for these energy companies. But what we're trying to do here with Energy WebX is bring these technologies to market so that it can be as straightforward as possible for these energy companies to deploy these solutions without having to go through all the pain of, standing up their own blockchain, integrating their solutions with some series of blockchains. So we're really excited to bring Energy WebX to market. I think it's going to solve a lot of these different interoperability challenges that many enterprise projects have in the back end. And man, it's going to be awesome. But Daniel, you've been close to Energy WebX as well. What are we looking at in terms of how this thing is going to look like? How are people going to be able to interact with it? What can we expect?
Yeah, so actually, I've had a poll on my X account. I can't say Twitter anymore. It's very hard for me to say X and X.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have had a poll, and within 2 to 3 weeks, we will be creating a live session where we go through the UI with the community just to collect some first round of feedback for everybody to see how easy it is to lift and lower your tokens from the Energy Web chain to the Energy Web X. So yeah, keep an eye out. Within 2 to 3 weeks, we will be announcing a live session. Make sure you are there because that's the latest news on Energy Web X Marketplace App Store.
Yeah, and just on that from my side, Daniel, one of the other, I didn't mention this, I talk a lot about enterprise and how we're working with enterprise. For me, one of the most interesting things about having Energy Web X live is that anybody is now going to be able to contribute and basically help run this entire worker node infrastructure so that these different computers out there in the wild that are performing useful work for energy companies, these worker nodes are not just validating blocks or producing blocks. They're actually performing business functions that make sense for these different energy companies. This is going to be a way for everybody to participate, which I think is really cool. In the past, it's really just been focused on enterprise centric. With Energy Web X out in the wild, this is just such an interesting way to create an ecosystem of different individuals and technology providers that are going to be able to run these nodes that will be directly contributing to decarbonization of these different industries. I think it's really cool.
So Jesse, could you here for the new folks give an example? I know, for example, Deutsche Telekom has been very, very excited about Energy Web X. Could you give a real world example how Energy Web token holders could participate in something, a worker node, whatever a company spins up?
Let's start on the use case side for what these solutions actually support. A lot of companies in the Energy Web ecosystem want to do something called granular renewable energy matching. In some places around the world, it's called 24/7 renewable energy matching. In other places, it's called carbon-free energy. What that really means is that let's say you have data coming in from a bunch of different wind, solar, and hydroelectric facilities on one side. And on the other side, you've got data about electricity consumption of a variety of different buildings or data centers or whatever. What these corporates want is the ability to match the energy on one side with the building energy consumption data on the other side in a verifiable and transparent way. The way that many of these companies purchase renewables works right now is the opposite of transparent. It's incredibly opaque. What they do is purchase these things called renewable energy certificates or energy attribute certificates that represent green energy produced by an asset, typically over a period of time. Let's call it a year. They take those certificates, they put them on their ESG report, and they wash their hands. Now, I'm being a bit glib in my description there if there are any renewable energy purchasing people on the line here. But generally speaking, that is the way that corporate renewable energy purchasing has worked for a long time. What these companies in our ecosystem are looking for is a system that provides them a far deeper level of granularity so that they can show and prove that this data center in this specific geography is using energy from these different renewable energy facilities, and that energy has been matched with this building, and it is not being double counted and being used by some other building. So we, as Energy Web, have constructed a variety of solutions in that space over time. We've brought them to market with a bunch of different partners that we've marketed and talked about with the broader kind of Energy Web community many times. What we're trying to do now with worker nodes is to bring that verifiability and that transparency up to a completely new level. So to answer your question specifically, Daniel, in this setting, there will be worker nodes. So again, these are individual computers either running in the cloud, potentially on a mobile phone. So they're basically just software applications. And these workers will be performing the work of that matching. So they won't know anything about the specifics of those solar farms or the specifics of those buildings, but the worker nodes will be ingesting data from both sides of that equation, and they're performing this work of matching those two sides of the equation according to user-specified preferences. Anybody that takes Energy Web tokens and stakes them is going to be able to run those nodes. There may be some other requirements there. Some organizations might want KYC. They might want some other things to be true in order for people to run those nodes. But again, the point there is for businesses. So for example, like Deutsche Telekom, or for even individuals to take Energy Web tokens, stake them in order to be trusted to run one of these nodes. So kind of a long-winded explanation, but again, Energy Web is not some sort of hand-wavy project about these different Web3 technologies and here you just stake tokens and earn funny money out of thin air. The reason I think it's always important, and you'll always see us do this as Energy Web, explaining what is the actual use case here. Why would businesses want to do this? That has to be there. Because at the end of the day, we are only bringing these solutions to market if they actually support decarbonization. And in this case, we found a really interesting way for these worker nodes to perform something that's useful for these companies. Because the alternative is dump all of this data into a centralized repository in a proprietary closed setting, have a server somewhere, perform that matching work, and spit out the results. With these worker node networks, that work is performed in a way that can be verified by the public, which is what you need in order to trust that this work is being performed and that that information can be trusted by the public. So anyway, hopefully that helps explain it. We'll have a lot more information coming out about these different worker node networks, how they work, how to get involved in the coming quarters. But I think that's probably one of the easier examples to explain.
Yeah, that was a great example, Jesse. Thank you. Last topic. In our previous session or sessions, we mentioned some changes in the board. Any updates on that?
Yes, so the Energy Web board is evolving. We'll have some announcements coming up soon on that. We still are maintaining close relationships with our founders at RMI and at Grid Singularity. But we will be having a new board chair coming online and then adding some other individuals to the board that really bring very significant weight in terms of their influence and impact and vision for grid decarbonization. So can't drop any names right now, but we will be giving an update to everybody in terms of the board configuration of the Energy Web Foundation in the near future.
Awesome. So last but not least, I was asked to share some of the upcoming events that we've scheduled already. So one of the next events will be an event with Zeef to discuss our SaaS model and Validator Node as a service. Obviously, the UI session. Jesse, you will be having a session with someone from the new board to introduce and talk about the new board. So this is already scheduled. And then we have another session with Mahir, who's going to dive into Energy Web X actual production screens. So yeah, behind the scenes, the technical team is already working. Screens are already implemented. The backend is like everybody is in working mode. So yeah, I see a lot of questions like, hey, are you guys already implementing? How is it going? Everybody is working very hard. Are we on schedule? So far, yes, we are on schedule. So yeah. Anything else, Jesse?
Awesome. No, I think that does it from my side. Thank you everybody for coming. Keep the questions coming, and Really excited for what the rest of the year is going to bring.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.